Welcome back to Series 6 by Fourth Location. I'm LaurenWhatevs here with Scott and our guest for the day, KMBest, newly minted second dinner employee slash
Whoa,
shill.
newly minted guy with a contract and no health insurance. Okay, like, that is not what I am.
I'm just trying to crank up the shill levels.
Yeah. I am not a second dinner employee. Ideally, at some point, that would be amazing. I am not that. I do not speak for second dinner. I am not on this podcast as a representative of second dinner. And I know both of you know that, but I do find it important to be like, whoa. Let's dial this back. In fact, even the blue color in the Discord, it's like, all right, can we get like a half blue, half green, just so people know I'm the equivalent of a summer intern and not like a serious answer here? Yeah.
All right. Well, we discussed several topic ideas, and the one that we came up with that we want to throw at KM today is nominally the best way to counter a deck.
Sure.
We may go in an entirely different direction.
I am under the impression that it definitely will, right? Because basically what happens with these videos, pretty much every other content creator, my understanding is Lauren and Scott go to them and they're like, here's what we want to have you on the show. What would you like to talk about? Here, like, you know, what are you known for? Give us your best foot forward. With me, it's very much like they'll go to me and they'll be like, let's get Cam on the show. And they'll ask me for something to talk about, and I will say literally anything. Talk about whatever. Just give me a topic and let me run with it. It's fine. I'm good for it, right? And the way we arrived at this one was talking around the concept of archetypes. We talked about what an archetype is in Marvel Snap, and this is a particularly confusing issue because there are really only two archetypes in my view. And this is kind of like a secret thing, right? There's two archetypes. There's decks that play interaction and then decks that don't play interaction. Like everything else is kind of fake. And those two archetypes to me are just like, are you a combo deck? Are you a mid-range deck? And when I use those terminologies, if you're a combo deck, if you're not playing interaction, you're a mid-range deck if you are playing interaction. And those terminologies for me are sort of grafted on from previous card games and might not be the perfect words for talking about stuff in Marvel Snap. But when you talk about how to counter a deck, a lot of people think the way you beat a deck that's comboing off is by playing an interaction card that beats it. And that can be true. One of the ways to beat a zombies deck is by playing Shadow King or by playing Gambit, Horseman of Death. But the other way to beat a combo deck, if they're not playing any interaction, is to play Mr. Negative. You're not losing that. It's actually much more reliable because your whole deck counters them and one card doesn't have to carry the entire load of the matchup. Just your basic game plans line up in such a way that you win. Zombie Galacti does a lot of that stuff. But I really should learn how to pronounce that name.
The official video ruined it for all of us.
It did. It did. But yeah, like that's sort of the space we were going to play around in this episode. So I've sort of delineated the process that got us here. And then from there, I kind of just expect you guys to throw questions at me like a dodgeball.
Yeah.
Well, so it's kind of the push-pull between points and interaction, right? Like some decks will have a lot of interaction. Some decks, people will throw in one interactive card.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is your advice for how to approach a game, like as a medium level player? Be the one with the question, not be the one with the answers. That's advice I hear all the time going into a tournament. Like, how do you approach this kind of dichotomy of points versus interaction?
I think being the person who asks the questions is good if you're not engaging with the Snap system very much, or if you're willing to engage with it a lot. But there's like a medium space that people exist in where they're not super confident in their own game plan and they're very afraid of their opponent's game plan, where it's actually not a good space to be the person who's asking the questions because people know better than you what your power and your snaps actually mean. That's something to like, there's nuance to it because of the snap mechanic that if this were a different game, I would say, you know, for a medium player, always be the person asking the questions. If we're playing Magic the Gathering, ask the questions, play an easier deck. Don't make yourself do all this work every single time. No questions about it. For a medium level of skill, even a higher relative, like what you might not consider medium. This is advice I would give me in Magic. I was pretty good at Magic. I would still give me this advice. It's just like, you need to simplify the game. The people that you're playing against are way better than you. Simplify the game. Do what you can, right? And that is how you get to a point of greater understanding. If you simplify the game enough, you'll start to understand things more because you won't be focusing as much on your execution. When you're not focusing as much on your execution, you're able to focus more on things that are happening on top of your execution. You won't be focusing as much on, did I allocate these points correctly? Because you'll know you have done that. What you'll be focusing on is like, what is the meta game of how this matchup that we're playing goes? And that's when you start noticing stuff like, you know, it's actually a lot easier to counter this deck if I just play something that is bigger than it than it is if I just play a Shadow King or whatever. And that's where a lot of that kind of, like, I think there's a misconception in the community that is like, how do I beat this matchup? I play a tech card. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the best way for you to beat that matchup. It's going to be the best way to take whatever deck you're already playing and customize it to be better in that matchup. But it's not going to be the best way to beat that matchup. And I think that it's really dangerous to put yourself in a position where you are playing effectively a combo deck, all this non-interactive stuff where I'm just doing points and doing points and doing points. And there are other bigger predators in the water in the same space as you. And I think that's actually like what you guys originally had in mind, was like, why is it bad to be the second biggest non-interactive deck? And it's because you get eaten by the biggest one. And that's sort of where this spiraled from.
Yeah. If we wanted to force some nuance in there, I would think there are situations where the second best could be the right one to play in the meta if it's like less sensitive to tech and there's a lot of tech around.
Or sensitive to different tech.
But like, then it wouldn't just be that, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't, like, the issue you run into a lot with Venus decks is like, we're smaller than the Captain Carter decks. We lose to the exact same cards. Right. Everything that beats that deck, it beats us too. And so you just sit there and you're like, what is the actual case to be made that if I care about winning, I should be playing this?
Well, yeah, Venus was actually kind of the real inspiration for this question. It's like, because I'll get people saying, Venus must be good. Look at all these points I'm getting. How could it be bad? But I just was interested in the idea that, like, yeah, if there were a couple of decks deleted, it would be the best deck maybe. But there's this kind of like system of ceilings on decks. There's things that keep a deck below the surface.
Yes. And we see this a lot with like nerf cycles where like two of the best decks, like whatever the best mid-range deck and whatever the best combo deck are, one of them gets nerfed. And then it's like, okay, well, surely the second best mid-range or combo deck will then become the new best one. But because of the ways in which matchups actually play out, that almost never actually happens. Because the removal of that thing and the matchups it was standing on top of or stepping on top of or oppressing or whatever word you want to use for, you know, Star-Lord sat on top of every combo deck. None of them could be playable into a deck that Eliath you 3 times. Like, you just can't, what are you going to do about that, Living Tribunal? You're not going to do anything about that. And so when Star-Lord went away, it was like, all right, what is actually going to be the next combo deck to rise up? I don't think anyone would have predicted what actually happened, which was the Carter stuff. I don't think anyone would have been like, yeah, that's what it's going to be. You know, I don't think that was on people's radar in that way. It could have happened, but I don't think it was like, and it was like immediate too. It was like within a week, it was like, oh yeah, the Carter deck's the new combo deck. And I think that when you analyze Marvel Snap metagames, almost all of it is downstream of what is doing the most points and what is the best interactive deck. Combo deck, mid-range deck. Everything is sort of downstream of that. And what makes this metagame so good is I don't actually know if I have an answer to either. I don't know what would you say the best combo deck and mid-range deck in this metagame are? And how sure are you?
I mean, not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure at all.
I used to be really sure. Like, it's the first time in 6 months where we're not sure, right?
That's good.
Like, for 6 months, it's been, either Sholau is the best mid-range deck or secretly the best combo deck. Star-Lord is the best combo deck, or Captain Carter or TOV. We knew. Within a week each time, we knew. And now here we are a week out, and we don't know.
Is that a matter of perfect balance? I'm saying that in a loaded way because it's not really a thing. Or...
Well, they hired I hired a new employee.
What a coincidence. They brought in KMBest and the metagame is perfect. Yeah, that's definitely a thing I'm responsible for. Quote me.
You could take the credit. Or is it just that we haven't solved it yet?
I'm not sure. And for what it's worth, Venus is... Now that I think everyone's sort of gotten it out of their system with the zombie Venus stuff, which zombie Venus is like a super demanding point package. There's just very little room in it. It's hard to get other threes in there because you're playing Venus, you're playing zombie Scarlet Witch, and then you're playing, ideally, some combination of multiple zombie giant men on the final turn of the game. So, like, most of your turns are spoken for. You have nowhere to put a tech card. You don't have the ability to do that. And I have very little belief that that deck could ever be the best deck in the game unless they nerfed a bunch of other stuff, which is to say every single other deck that does more points than it. But the smaller versions, the ones that I've, like, weirdly, the Submariner stuff, even though he's not a very important part of it, stuff people started messing around with because of Submariner. Elsa Bloodstone, Venus, Kitty Pryde, Bishop, Angela. I can see a path for the archetype now that I couldn't see 2 weeks ago. Where it's like, that's a deck where if we get it down to 10, suddenly I could play Cosmo Juggernaut. And then we're talking about a good point package in Cosmo Juggernaut, which is really hard for that to be bad. It is really hard for that to be a bad thing. And I had no faith in Venus when she was as demanding as she was, but like many point packages, she comes out and then you figure out what you need to pair, what you can cut from the deck and what you can't cut from the deck. And I think she's going through that right now. I'm more optimistic for her than I've been in 3 weeks.
Yeah, we almost always start super greedy and then have to dial it back to like, oh, this is the 3 or 4 card package. It might be bigger in the case of Venus, but yeah, it's interesting seeing how that develops. It's just, I don't know. I feel like it usually develops really, really fast. So we don't often have these periods of where it's the Wild West.
The Wild West is a great place to be.
Yeah.
I hate to be the one to say this. Ever since the Star-Lord nerf, the meta's just kept getting better.
Well, we talk a lot about people complaining about the meta or what makes a good meta or what makes a bad meta. I mean, I'm starting to think that what people actually want is uncertainty. Like, it doesn't even matter how healthy or even a meta is. If there's one identifiable villain, regardless of how high above the meta that villain happens to be, people don't like it. People want it when it's like there's a little debate or a little uncertainty.
I would believe that. Yeah. This is why I'm not in any position related to balance, presumably. I don't really think balance matters as much as the perception of balance, or to put it another way, I think that the function of balance in Marvel Snap is to promote fun. And one of the ways it can do that is via metagame diversity. And that's a great way to promote fun. But it's why whenever I do like a fake OTA patch proposal or something like that, what I'm saying is these are cards that I think improving would make the game more fun. And understanding that fun is purely subjective and that this is a lot more artist stuff than it is objective math stuff. Like, we can all agree that Galactus, not fun to have happen to you, but very fun to do.
Right.
And like that kind of stuff, it doesn't mean it's not fun. It does mean that it's asymmetric, right? And I think that Marvel Snap is sort of built on the principle of having some symmetric fun. That's what the game is about. That's why the cubes exist. That's why everything is happening the way that it is, so that you can enjoy even games that you lost and feel like you came out of there with a smart retreat, something good happening, right? And I think that if you asked 100 people, they'd all, not all of them, but you get a majority opinion that's like, yeah, Galactus, not a particularly fun Marvel Snap card, you know?
Right, they have a handful of things like that, right? Like Clog and Mill. like things that are intentionally not super strong, but they're still there, so that if you're the
Yep.
type of player who enjoys that kind of interaction being toxic, that option is available to you, but they don't want them to be so popular that they're everywhere. Like I think opponent diversity is probably like the number one criteria in what makes people say
Agreed.
this meta feels
Mhm.
good.
100% agree. I feel like the guy on Subway takes right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. Here is my credit card microphone. Like, you 100% correct. Yes.
So it feels fragile though, right? Because we do have these moments where the meta feels really good and diverse, but then a single OTA or a single new card can come out and just totally throw it out of whack. And if it were, I don't know, if it were easy to make sure that it stayed balanced, I think they would.
See, I'm not even sure about that. My instinct is, again, like, balance doesn't matter out. Like, okay, let me put it this way. There is a degree of value in imbalanced metagames as long as they are consistently providing new experiences.
Mm.
And I think you see this when you see their OTA like cadence. Like, they're often willing to be like, all right, well, we think this is a little over, but we're going to give it a little bit of time to make sure that we're right about that, right? We're going to, but part of the unsaid thing to me there is that there's value in the uniqueness of that experience. Like, you are having an experience you were not previously having. You are having like maybe a viscerally negative reaction to that experience, but there is something in that experience that was not happening previously. And I think that a lot of people, when they talk about balance, they think about things in terms of, would it be okay if?
Mhm.
Would it be okay if this? Would it be busted if this? Would it be all right if this? And they very rarely frame it in terms of, would it be fun?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's actually the tension that's pushing against keeping things balanced, is they don't want to leave them similarly balanced for 6 months
It
straight and
doesn't
make
want
the
it, you don't
game
want it
feel
to be the same.
samey.
Yes. You don't want it to be the same. And like, Marvel Snap players have, and this is not a knock on Marvel Snap players, incredibly high standards for how long it takes for some stuff to feel samey.
Yep.
Yeah. It's insane. I see people complain after 48 hours sometimes.
Yeah, like we've played other card games.
Yeah.
We know what it's like when something feels samey in a card game. The response time in Marvel Snap is extremely quick compared to that, but a lot of people who play Marvel Snap have not played other card games. They don't have that understanding of the space. Marvel Snap is by far the card game that I have played with the widest array of different viable decks and across a year.
Oh, by far.
By an unbelievable amount.
Yeah, I think this might be, like you were saying, our names for these archetypes and our perception of these archetypes are colored by other card games. I think people are coloring their sense of balance too. OTAs aren't really about balance, but like bans in Magic are explicitly about balance. They have to balance the game. With OTAs, they don't have to balance it. They could completely imbalance it. They just come back 2 weeks later.
It's definitely something that I'm not saying that they should lean into more, but it's something that they can if they wanted to. Like, the function of balance in other card games is maintaining fairness in a tournament environment that people are playing for lots of money. Like, that's not a factor in Marvel Snap. What Marvel Snap's biggest balance metric is are people having fun? That's the goal of OTAs, is, are people having fun? Are enjoyable things happening? And in so much as balance issues impact that, they're because things get samey. They're because things are not fun. They're like, that's when imbalance is a problem in a card game, but Marvel Snap operates on fast enough timescales that 2 weeks of an imbalanced meta kind of isn't that big of a problem, because it probably took you a week to figure out that it was imbalanced. And so really we're talking about 1 week here a lot of the time. And so the most you ever get in Marvel Snap is like, all right, we're pretty sure this card is a problem. Maybe it'll last 6 weeks. That's the longest you really have as like an archetype that's like seriously messing stuff up, I think.
Well, here's another unique Snap aspect I've heard you talk about before, which is it's only in Marvel Snap where if a card is imbalanced for too long, it will permanently stain that card's reputation amongst the player base. If Loki is strong for long enough, it doesn't matter how weak they make it. People will hate it. I see people complain about cards that are actively bad because they used to be good.
Yep. Give me some examples.
Loki, Gambit Horseman of Death.
He is not actively bad. Gambit Horseman of Death is a good card.
Arishem's
is fine. Like, I don't know.
Have you turned around on Victoria Hand now?
Yeah,
think she was bad a while ago?
I have no explanation for it, but basically my cube rate is insane because people love staying against Victoria Hand. That's the thesis. It's like I don't think it should be this good, but man, are people staying? Like, man,
like
are people staying? Yeah, it's like, all right, okay.
I think that's how Lauren and I completed our infinite climbs this season, is people staying in against our end of turn decks when they just shouldn't have been staying in against.
Yeah,
this got nerfed to hell, right? There's no way they can put up big numbers. Yeah, that's like a different level of metagaming, is like getting into player psychology, how they relate to certain cards. Do they make bad decisions? Playing Zombie Galacti, or before it was the way it is now, so people would just stay in because Galacti sucks, but then you don't play Galacti. It's pretty funny.
Actually, do you think it depresses Arishem's play rate because people like lean in when they're facing an Arishem? They're like, all right, I gotta focus and beat this Arishem deck. I hate it so bad.
I would imagine. I think Arishem's play rate is probably pretty outsized compared to how good he is.
Yeah.
I would imagine that, like, I don't know, in my head, there's like a correct ratio of how much each deck should be part of the metagame. And I would imagine Arishem is off in like the overplayed.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Well, how far off do archetypes get from that? Like, let's assume that KMBest has a really good view of what the metagame ought to be based on the power levels of the decks. Sure. How far do decks stray from that? How often do you see it like, this deck is being way overplayed, this deck is being way overplayed?
Pretty often. And it's usually a function of like, wow, this is super boring. Mm. Like right now, I think the Captain Carter deck is probably pretty underplayed. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's the best deck in Marvel Snap. I'm saying I do not see it nearly enough. Mm-hmm. And
it has absolutely faded from where I am too. And I don't really know why.
I can't think of a good reason why. It just seems like the more people play Venus, the better that deck gets. To circle this one back, is like, if you're playing like Venus Zombie Giant Man, and I'm playing the Captain Carter deck, I don't think if I do my thing, there's a single thing you can do about it. Mm-hmm. Not one. And like, when you talk about like how to counter this stuff, to me, Captain Carter is like a really obvious thing where it's like, until these people start adopting some tech cards, just run them over. Like, just play the Captain Carter deck, do anything with it, make 80 points in 2 lanes, call it a day. Like, what's the Zombie Giant Man going to do about that?
So Captain Carter is kind of the answer if you're facing a lot of Giant Man. What's the answer if you're facing a lot of the Captain Carter?
Juggernaut, Shadow King. You're not going to beat them on power. You have to just...
So that's the tallest points deck right now.
Yes. Like, that is the one where it's just like, I don't think there's a single deck in this game that can go power for power with them consistently. You have to disrupt them. And there are a lot of like reasonable ways to do that. Shadow King's pretty much the obvious one. But it's the deck that makes me feel like zombies is like just such a bad choice, because anything that would be good into Carter is naturally good into zombies, and you don't get as many free wins against the people playing zombies, because by definition, those are 50-50s.
I almost feel like a metagame necessarily has to have people who are trailing behind, right? And I know we're talking about a deck that is underplayed, but that's the nature of a metagame, is that the cutting edge of it is feasting on the players who haven't figured out the next thing yet. Mm-hmm. Oh, I feel bad for players who are always trailing.
Well, yeah, they look at this. They look at the Sunday decks that Kim puts out, and by Monday morning they're old.
Yeah, I really do think that like the best way to use my content is to say, these are what I'm trying to beat. This is the context that exists, and how do I go out there and beat it?
Yeah, identify the deck that answers the most of this.
Yep. Not necessarily answers, but just like, what would I feel good playing into this field? mental
Going
models.
taller is
like,
a way to answer, right?
What'd you say? Sorry. I
Going
mean to
taller,
clarify.
isn't that another
Yes,
way to
like,
answer?
yeah,
It doesn't have to be
I don't
interacting.
think of it like an answer though, which is
Okay.
actually like kind of the point I was trying to make
Yeah.
15 minutes ago before we started doing whatever this is. Before I started monologuing like a Shakespearean actor, I was originally trying to make the point. It's like people think to counter something means to play a tech card.
Well, yeah,
And
I do think
no.
people like they look at the deck, they like, what's the meta tyrant?
Yep.
I'll put in whatever the tech card is that interacts best with that deck.
And sometimes that works. You want to be Victoria Hand playing Sasquatch, you whip a Mobius into your deck, you'll feel great about that matchup. That is something that you will feel amazing about. But like sometimes it doesn't work. Like a good way to beat Venus deck, which I have been hearing, and I don't know if you guys been hearing this feedback. A lot of people saying like Venus is busted.
Yeah, I see it
Yeah.
a lot at I hear that feedback a ton.
Yeah. And it's like that's kind of who this podcast is for. Venus isn't busted, not because you can Shadow King or Gambit it, but because there's a bigger deck doing more green power that you should be playing.
Well, yeah, not to make it the Venus podcast, but I think it is a really fascinating card because I'm not even really seeing much of the zombies stuff because I think it's just so fragile. It's just not that good.
Really, really bad.
But what I am seeing a ton of now is Aurora Venus.
Yeah, that's a good deck.
And that has a Cosmo in it.
And a Spider Ham. It does stuff. There's just like a sort of level of bare minimum interaction that if you're not going to be the biggest points deck, you have to have. Like you are just going to get run over every other time. You need them to feel like they're not 100% to snap into you. There was a while where I was playing the Captain Carter deck and people were still playing like Shadowlands Daredevil stuff. And they would play a Shadowlands Daredevil on turn 2 and I would snap because the game was actually over.
Yeah.
You don't have, like, you're playing the Shadowlands Daredevil version. You don't have any tech in there. You're playing entirely a deck of like 10s and stuff. You're doing that stuff. I do not care. I am just going to go bigger than you. And like, that is what you really want to avoid.
So does that make the most dangerous balance risks in the game decks that have big points packages but can fit in combo? That's what Star-Lord was like. Or decks that can be like throw priority, like complex decks like Bounce, where you can't interact, uninteractable points packages, I guess.
I think the biggest risks in Marvel Snap from a balance perspective are combo decks that don't have an easy answer, like what Star-Lord was, and a deck that's just 6 tech cards, like what TOV was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that are like, these make meta games suck.
Yeah, we've had other examples. That's not our first example like that,
no.
where it's just a pile of tech cards.
And I think that like that, I don't think it's a coincidence that one of those gets blown up and then suddenly the metagame is super wide open, because we've gone from you have to follow all of these rules. You can't lose to Stardust. You can't lose to Mobius. You can't lose to Shadow King. Those are all the rules you had to follow, right? And now you kind of don't have to follow any of those rules. You can still
get those decks are the gatekeepers.
Yes. And well, so like when one of those gets blown up, you end up with I guess you think of it as like contraction then expansion.
Mm-hmm.
The contraction and then it gets blown up and then you can do a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it seems like it oscillates between like big flashy combos and things that control those combos.
Yep. That's Marvel Snap. And it's been like that for 3 years. The thing that I think made, like, when I first remember this dynamic crystallizing and becoming really obvious to me was when Living Tribunal became a deck way back at the end of like 23, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And Cozy covered it. It was the Hella Enjoyer build of Living Tribunal. And ever since then, we've been in this understanding of the metagame, where it's like, here's the guys that go big, and then there's the smaller decks that have the interactive tools for those decks. And then if you play by the rules of the smaller decks that have the interactive tools for those decks, but still manage to go big, then suddenly you're in a different point. And this is always why Hella was so offensive to me before Stardust came out. Because Hella, there wasn't a way to deal with it. It was just, I'm bigger than every mid-range deck. You lose. And what Hella would do when it became a prominent aspect of metagames was say, well, if everyone else is playing Hella, mid-range is unplayable, I'll just go play a bigger combo deck.
Well, yeah, I have written on my paper here. My next thing I wanted to talk about was like gatekeepers like Hela.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that Hela functioned as a gatekeeper towards mid-range? Like these are these kind of terms that I kind of wanted to get into.
Sure.
What is
Okay.
mid-range? Why does something like Hela gatekeep it?
It used to. I want to be super clear.
Yeah,
Hela
yeah,
no
old
longer
Hela.
does
Yeah,
this.
for sure.
But what Hela would do is, and this is also like a relatively lower power version of Marvel Snap. I'm not sure Hela would be able to gatekeep now as well as it used to, even if Stardust didn't exist. But what it used to be was you'd be playing, your deck of Angela and Bishop, no Venus, scaling your Angela up to, 10 power, scaling your Bishop up to 12 power. And then what Hela would do is revive 70 power on the final turn of the game. And there was nothing you could do about it. You could try to guess where they're going and Eliath or Cosmo it, but that's not really meaningfully doing anything about it. And the more you devote to trying to counter it like that, the less you actually have points such that it even matters in the first place. And so what Hela would do is gatekeep any deck trying to play what I would describe as a normal game of Marvel Snap.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, oh, I played a card on turn 1 and turn 2 and turn 3 and turn 4. And then I'm like doing things on the later turns to sort of build a lead and solidify it and engage with the mechanics of the game. And the things that matter in this game are where I put my points and all of that. And what Hela would do is say, actually, this game ended when you queued into me.
Okay, so to play devil's advocate just for a second.
Shoot.
Is it that you didn't like Hela, or you didn't like that Hela was a sandcastle that you could kick? Because it's a lack of interactivity, right?
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not saying that's my opinion. I hated Hela also because it made me not be able to play the decks I want, but it's because I can't answer it.
People misunderstand why I hate Hela. I hated what she did. I have no moral objection to the card. It was always about the role she played in metagames. And
suppressing specifically the decks that I want to play.
Not like the decks that I want to play.
For me.
Like 70% of Marvel's Snap decks.
Yeah, okay.
What she would do is say, you must be this tall to ride.
Yeah.
And the bigger the numbers on your combo, the less where those numbers go matter. And a lot of the core gameplay about Marvel Snap is about locations and point allocation and investment at various locations. And that is what is, I think, the enjoyable part of Marvel Snap for a majority of people. Not for everybody. Some people love playing Galactus. That's sick. And I love that for you. But like one of the things that Hela would do is take us into metagames where the dominant factors were deck matchups.
Mm-hmm.
The dominant factors
before you start the game.
Before the game.
Yeah.
And that is always, like, it's always a thing that does matter, right? Like some matchups are really bad. Some matchups are really good. Hela would make things so centralized on that, that it was on a far end of that spectrum. It's not to say that nothing ever does that now. I think a big offender that I think people might not talk about enough, Gambit Horseman of Death, huge offender at this. Like, definitely a guy that's like, wow, I don't know if that guy should be doing this. Like,
yeah, that's our current most gatekeepy type card, right? It prevents certain decks from just being playable at all.
He's like a better, not better, but like he's Killmongery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the more you're counting on small pieces, like small guys, the more your opponent playing 3 gambits, it's just like, oh, well, why did I even bother? Like, why did I play this game in the first place? Like, Gambit's a huge offender in terms of how that stuff shakes out.
I was thinking both of them, especially Hela, but both of them also have the component where they don't really interact well with the snap and retreat system either, right? Like, you don't have anything telegraphing on turn 6 if your opponent has Hela or not. You just gamble that they didn't draw her. Like, that's a terrible experience. And Horseman is more like, you don't know what he's going to destroy. You just know that he's going to destroy things.
Or you don't know that they have 3 of him in hand that all cost a combined 3 energy or whatever.
I guess that's
right?
true too. You could just dump them on the last turn.
No, I think that's also valid. To me, it's always been about metagame dynamics, right? And like my fundamental contention is not that anyone who disagrees with what I'm about to say is wrong, but that they are probably in a minority, which is what makes Marvel Snap fun is that there are 3 locations and you have to win 2 of them. And that point distribution on those locations and making smart decisions about that should be a significant component of metagames. And in as much as I have ever disliked Hela, it's only been through the lens of her, not, oh, I'm randomly resurrecting stuff, but the bigger your numbers are, the less being smart with those numbers matters. When you're doing stuff that is big enough to beat Hela, like Mr. Negative Iron Man or whatever, who cares? Just put 4 cards in 2 locations. It's fine. Like, you don't really have to do a lot of work to win once that happened. That already happened when you did the combo.
Were the Star-Lord and Sholau eras worse for gatekeeping? Like, we had Butt on, and he talked about how he quit the game for a while because
Star-Lord was horrendous.
He felt like it meant he couldn't experiment.
Star-Lord was really bad for this. Star-Lord sat on top of... Both of them combined did a really good job of sitting on top of everything, right? Star-Lord sat on top of combo decks because, you know, not only did I somehow randomly get to play Legion, nice magic, dude, I also got to play 3 Eliaths or Fin Fang Foom or whatever. And it's like, nice combo. Great job.
Yeah, soloing the Eliath was always really an unpleasant.
And the other thing that happens is Sholau was sitting on top of mid-range decks. And towards the end of Sholau's lifespan, I don't know how many people picked up on this, it kind of turned into a combo deck. Like, it became one just out of necessity because it sat on top of mid-range decks well enough that they were all just gone.
Yeah, it actually reminded me a ton of the current Carter decks now.
A little bit.
It was just you play these cards in these sequences and then you get a giant thing that splits.
Like, I mean, we were doing Carter Moonstone on the Maverick with the Sholau in those metagames too. Like, it was, I think it was too clear how good those 2 decks were.
Mm-hmm.
And they started benefiting from the coverage each of them provided to the other.
Mm-hmm. I think they had a really interesting dynamic at different levels as well, because different levels of people you would talk to would have slightly different complaints about the 2 of them. There'd be one that they hated more than the other, but they were both omnipresent like throughout the ladder. Kind of a 1-2 punch. That's another thing, like we were talking about decks that don't get played enough, that are underplayed. I think that's something that keeps decks from being played is their complexity level.
Yeah.
I think for a while, the Carter Brood deck wasn't being played for complexity reasons.
Well, stuff like Batroc Move, which kind of never came down to the lower levels, but
I never saw it. Yeah.
I saw it once or twice.
I saw myself playing it a couple times.
Batroc is just like quietly one of the most messed up cards they have ever made, and he just gets to skate. Like, he has been skating for so long. When you look at it, it's like, why is he a 112? Just shut up, don't ask.
Yeah, even bounce did trickle down because some people, I think it was just so cool that people were willing to put the reps in. Batroc never made any penetration.
That's crazy to me. Batroc, to be clear, we weren't in a good meta for him for a while. Like, Sholau and Star-Lord sat on top of him really, really well. Like, they crushed the life out of him. Don't get me wrong. Towards the back end, when they became combo decks, it was like, okay, Batroc, GG. Like, you cannot win. I am just stat checking you. But wow, is that a card that has consistently been extremely strong? And, you know, like, this is what I mean. We talk about, like, what does it mean for things to be balanced, right? Balanced for who? Balanced for me? Balanced for the majority of players? What does it mean? And fundamentally, my contention is it means balanced for not me, for the majority of players. And if Batroc isn't a problem for the majority of players, they should tell me to shut the hell up.
Lauren, have you played against this like multiple man deck that's going around at all?
I have once.
Yeah, once?
I imagine I haven't seen it once. I've only heard content creators talk about it. I haven't seen one.
To be fair,
that is so scary. It's terrifying.
I've been busy the past week and a half. I haven't been playing a ton of Snap, so that is also a factor.
That's such a scary deck.
I think it's non-existent below.
That's unbelievable. Like that is.
Well, what is the deck even? I kind of only vaguely know about it.
Okay, so it came from a player who referred to as Quake Enjoyer here. He's been around. He's like one of the Pixel guys. He hit rank 1 with it, I want to say 6 weeks ago. And it's basically like multiple man stuff with Penny Parker. And the premise is you get a Penny Parker on a multiple man, use the spider on the multiple man, and then move it the same turn. So you go, multiple man, play the spider, move the spider with a ghost spider.
And then they can
move
both
the multiple
the
man,
next
and
turn.
then they can both move. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds like a
and
Lauren clip deck a little bit.
Yeah. And then from there, I think the thing that really probably took it over the edge is it's also a deck that has an Iska that moves. So you have like Madam Web Iska moving stuff. And then beyond that, it is also a deck that has Cosmo Juggernaut in it. Yeah. Pretty good subsidy to any deck there.
That's I think a movable Cosmo is also
movable Cosmo and Juggernaut. Yeah, it's
Cosmo's even better on Madam Web. Yeah,
it's a really, really powerful deck. The downfalls are largely related to I didn't draw the card multiple man, and now I'm just messing around with a Human Torch, and that's cool, but quite vulnerable. Where like whenever you draw the card multiple man, you are running downhill. You're just crushing people.
I mean, it's kind of nice though to see some like. I don't know if it's any cards that changed that made that good, or somebody just figured it out. Like there was a time when it would be you would cut the multiple man and just focus on the Human Torch.
There was a change actually. It was the Penny Parker change.
They fixed like a bug or something with her. Oh,
they fixed a bug that allowed Spider, when applied to a multiple man, to affect both multiple men if you moved it that turn. Prior to that bug fix, you would only get one movable multiple man. So effectively, they took that from an 18 or 27 power play to a 36 power play.
Mm. Was that in the patch notes, or did people figure that out?
It was in the patch notes.
Yeah. That's why you got to be reading the bug patch notes. All right, I want to pivot right before we close. Going back to the beginning, when you're making the bold claim, there are 2 archetypes in Marvel Snap. I'm compelled. Marvel Snap is a unique game, though. Do you think that same dichotomy exists in other card games? This can be a Scott question too.
No, because I think other card games have more room, right? Marvel Snap, when you break it down, it's like, okay, I've got 12 cards. If I multiply that by 4, like if you look at Magic lets you play 4 copies of a card, right? But you don't have to play 4 copies of a card in Magic. And you also have a sideboard. Yeah. So every deck has some amount of interaction in it.
Mm-hmm.
Every deck has some amount of, I expect this out of my opponent. I expect this out of my opponent. I am going to customize my things to a certain degree. And I think that one of the things that Marvel Snap loses when simplifying is that it is not as easy to justify playing a tech card, which means that the circumstances that justify it, either A, the circumstances must be much more significant, or the tech card must be good enough in enough spots that it barely even counts. So Mobius in your Pixie deck, Mobius in your old TOV deck, right? Like that kind of stuff is making the tech card part of your own game plan, and that helps you. And that is one of the things that has, like, there are a bunch of other things, right? But like that's primary. And then I guess I would say 1B is there's only 2 numbers on every Marvel Snap card.
Mm-hmm.
And that matters a lot too.
Yeah, I was thinking one of the core differences is that Marvel Snap doesn't really have alternate win conditions.
Yep.
Right? We have Galactus, and you could argue that, when it's stronger, like Clog and Lockdown are like, they're sort of rush down. They're a different way to win the game. But ultimately, it's have bigger numbers in 2 locations.
Yep.
And every single archetype has to do that.
Yep. And so similar to how we only have 2 numbers, we only really have 2 decks, right? How are you? And I think once you start thinking about stuff like this, I think you really get to understand, like, why did certain things happen in the metagame? Like, why did nobody plays Luke Cage? Where the hell is Afflict? Why is nobody playing Afflict? And the reason nobody's playing Afflict is because it's just a deck that's 12 engine cards. Doesn't interact with anything. So you're playing your Afflict deck, and you're like, oh, well, I've run up into Zombie Galacti. Guess I die. Can't beat that.
Well, yeah, you've kind of convinced me. It's not even just that we have 2 kinds of decks; we have 1.5 kind of decks, right? Because we have points decks and then
Yes.
points decks with some interaction. Because
There
we
are
don't have
actually-
full control decks either.
We don't have control or aggro.
Yeah.
Like, what exactly? Aggro is about ending the game early. How are you doing?
Aggro
The
is
game
lockdown, but they
like the closest you get is like lockdown or clog.
Yeah, I
where you're
think
like,
aggro
here's
is
my
lockdown.
proactive game plan to shut you down, and that's disincentivized by the cube system. It's disincentivized. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. It's something I think about a lot because like they've said they're doing draft, right? I don't know if you have enough archetypes to support a draft environment.
Right.
Like, how do you do that? Right? Like, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, that's a very weird question that I'm sure they have a ton of qualified people who can like work on that kind of stuff, but it's one of the baseline, oh, that's kind of odd and scary kind of things about doing something like that, where it's like other card games have defined roles. Snap doesn't necessarily. The roles are very fluid, and your identity with your deck is less about the role it takes. We're like in a Magic context, I'm an aggro player. My identity is tied. There are people whose identity are tied to being a control player, right? That means something about play style, even across formats. I'm a control player, but yeah, okay, what kind of control deck, right? I'm going to be playing, blue-black, blue-white. What kind of control deck is it? But like, I'm still a control player. I'm an aggro player. I'm playing white weenies. I'm playing red deck wins. Again, both valid. What is it? But there's a commonality there that doesn't exist in Marvel Snap.
Yeah, that is interesting. People like have these they deeply get into these identities of the archetypes from other games. In Marvel Snap, it's like, I'm a win 2 locations Snap player. There's not really another thing. I mean, some people do prefer more interaction and more control, and some people prefer more like combo-y. I don't even think it's that people prefer more combo. I think some people prefer deterministic win conditions where they can set it up so that they win no matter what. And some people prefer solitaire where they just have to focus on their cards. It's not even about anything else.
I think it's about your relationship to the snap mechanic. I think some people prefer decks where their relationship to the snap mechanic is obvious.
Well, we've heard a lot of people tell us they just simply do not interact with the mechanic. They just, maybe they sometimes snap if they're way ahead or something. The opponent retreats, that's fine. They just don't really deeply interact with it.
This is why I think it shouldn't be an unranked mode. Make an unranked mode, get rid of the snap mechanic. It's a game for casual players.
I think the Snap devs underrated how good their gameplay was.
Absolutely. we talk about that all the time, that they accidentally made too good of a game.
Yeah, like I think they underrated how good their gameplay was. They're like, we need the snap mechanic to sort of cover up some of the flaws here. And it's just like, actually, you guys, like, so this is like, hey Ben, I think you should have been more arrogant about this.
Okay, KM. I don't think you gave me a straight answer last time, and you don't have to this time. But if people want to find your stuff, where can they find you?
KMBest in a snap on YouTube, KMBestMS on Twitch, and on Twitter, and that's sort of it. These
let's give us an update on the
making a blue
sky show.
That hasn't happened yet.
Who is there a permanent guest host there now? Because you got
no, it's still. Hold on, you're mixing your.
Oh, what? I don't know the names of.
You're mixing your podcast.
I don't know the names of them. What's the Skip Bayless one?
The Skip the PTI one is the one I do with Lambie. That is on my main channel. It's called 8 Cubes. It's also on Spotify, but honestly, it's really only on Spotify because people were like, "Hey, can you please put this on Spotify?" I don't like advertise it or anything, so it's just there as a favor, basically. As is the KMB or the KMBest podcast, formerly with Jerry Thompson. Huge shout out to my boy Jerry. Currently with BU++, who I'm unclear if I can say his name is but, and if that will be good for my SEO or not. Haven't figured it out yet.
So you've got butt on that one, and 8 Cubes is like a rotating.
It's Lambie, except when Lambie is off playing Riftbound, basically.
Okay.
Like that's the schedule is like, it's Lambie. I've talked to him about it. He's like, I'd love to keep doing the show. I really enjoy just like being able to hang out and do this every week. And it's like, all right. And then I'll get a message that's like, I'm going to be in China playing Riftbound. And then I'll go find a guest host and yell at them until they host my show.
And I think there's like 5 or 6 other podcasts, but I don't know where.
That's not true. That is not true. I have 2 podcasts, kind of.
3.
3.
One with guest.
That's, I don't even think, you know what's weird is I don't even think of that as my show. I think of that as guest show.
You're just the permanent guest.
Yes, I have 3 podcasts. That's definitely like his deal though. Like that podcast gone through. Do people know what the Snapcast used to be? It was Valentine. Do you guys remember?
Oh, was it Valentine?
Yeah. Like it's been around for so long.
I remember it was Tech and Cena.
That was for a long time.
It's been so many different people because they just got the name and it was like, well, once you have the name, like this is
a great name. Once you got the name,
dude, like come on. But yeah, I guess I have 3 podcasts. You can also find me on the Marvel Snapcast with It's Guest Gaming, the Marvel Shillcast. That's what we do. Both of us contracted to work for Second Dinner, so it's over for.
If you want to hear about data mines, don't listen to that show. Tune into Fourth Location.
All right.
Wait, you cut it right there. That's the end of the episode, dude. Like you just.
But people who support us at a certain level get their names read every video.
Apologies to the supporters.
Blue Sky Snapper, Chase Pitzer, David G. Wingfield, Iron Cloak, One Big Man, Pulse Glazer, Ryan Wood, Search Out of David. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much.